as a standalone, is RingCentral good enough as a full contact center solution service, or do they need complementary pieces to it? Recently in their most recent conference call, they were speaking about Microsoft Teams and being able to piggyback on the strength of that on an enterprise-wide basis. Jason, I see you shaking your head, so I'm going to jump to you right there. Please go ahead.
So, I mean, RingCentral, so I have a love-hate relationship with them. So they started with integrated Zoom into their phone and collaboration platform. Then they went to a web UI similar to what Google Meet has with that. What we find is it's painful enough to install the RingCentral client to attend meetings. It operates in a different ecosystem, right? So like, if you give an example for Zoom, you have one app that you install and it does everything. If you have Teams, it's essentially the same way. You have a number of challenges that pop up with RingCentral as far as the usability. I think a lot of their market share is this sort of captured by catch up. A lot of their tools are this sort of an afterthought. And I see them needing a lot of help to get sort of that brand recognition. One thing that particularly caught my eye is a number of the people who moved to them at the start of the pandemic actually had horrific experiences due to scale. So I'd say it's not, even though it is one of the market leaders, I don't consider it as something that's really ready for prime time on its own.
Oh, that's interesting. I'm going to allow see if anybody else agrees or disagrees with that. When we're seeing here in our data is actually, at least amongst our peers that are citing it, there is a high adoption level for RingCentral, and we're not seeing any real decreasing or replacing. They're quite low. And then as far as our overall customer pervasion, they're only trailing behind much bigger players like Avaya and Zendesk, which are a little bit more mature. So it's really interesting and helpful to hear kind of that side, Jason. Our data right now isn't showing that. But that's why we actually do these panels. We always say the data will tell you what's happening, but it doesn't ever tell you why. Jim, you had mentioned earlier that you implemented RingCentral. So if possible, I'm going to ask you to kind of, jump in on here and what your thoughts are.
So our RingCentral implementation was pretty straightforward in the sense that we were replacing Vonage with RingCentral. So the gaps that we had with RingCentral was the international coverage. They did not have hubs in specific EMEA and Asia localities to allow us to deploy all the way through the organization where we had employees stationed. I felt the price of the dedicated RingCentral phone sets were a bit pricey and not commensurate to a SaaS or communication as a service provider. So we opted to let's all just use soft phones and not purchase the physical hardware tied to RingCentral.
I appreciate that. Yeah, and Jason, you brought up that point before about RingCentral and Zoom. Kind of, they were going down that collaboration path. They kind of had a divorce there. I'm also seeing a similar thing with Zoom and Five9. And I do think at a certain point it would be really smart if Zoom did choose a partner. So we'll see if they do that. RingCentral, for their credit, is partnered with NICE. And I'm wondering if maybe the collaboration between those two is something that's, providing a full enough service, or do you think they need to build out more? Natasha, I think you were about to chime in before on RingCentral, so if you have anything to add.
Yes, I think I just wanted to, you were talking about replacement versus, how those systems or solutions are being selected. We always look at the number of areas in terms of the selection criteria. It's the functionality and business fit. It's technology being used. It's vendor viability as well, including financial viability. It's the ecosystem as well, which is quite important in terms of the deep partnerships with the cloud providers, for example, or with ecosystems like analytics, conversational AI, Microsoft, 365, but also of huge technology innovations and cost level and financial benefits. So when you kind of take all that mix into the basket, so to speak, then you come up with kind of best of breed solutions based on those criteria. Dig deeper, especially for the large global enterprises like ourselves. So it was just a general comment in terms of what we look at when we choose those, amongst those solutions.
I appreciate that. You did mention the ecosystems here, and it was something that we have to discuss because, all of you have said this is about overall cloud adoption, cloud workload, and moving off-prem. So what we have here is our shared accounts analysis, where I can filter one sector with another. So what we're doing here is basically looking at those of your peers that cited Microsoft in the cloud, how that impacts their answers on their contact center. So we're basically looking at a stack alignment here. And what we're seeing for those that are in the Microsoft ecosystem, although on a lower citation basis, Five9 has the highest spending. However, the most pervasive, meaning the most people that are actually aligned, it's RingCentral, Zendesk, and Avaya. So Avaya and Zendesk are still very, valid at this point. I know a lot of you are talking about moving towards the next generation, but let's talk a little bit about the impact of Microsoft first and the Microsoft ecosystem and how it has in this space. As we all know, Microsoft is dominant in the enterprise. Majority of people already have Teams. They already have an E3 or E5 license. So in that scenario, why do you need a niche provider? Whether it's Five9 or RingCentral or whoever it might be we're discussing. If you already have an enterprise license with Microsoft and Microsoft Teams, what is the viability of layering in one of these niche providers? Chris, I haven't heard from you. I don't know if you have any thoughts on this topic.
Well, I mean, I think in your question, I mean, why we look at Microsoft as a whole solution provider from end to end? Is that what I'm talking about?
And if you have an enterprise license with Microsoft, what is the value and the need to layer in a feature set from one of these more niche providers?
Well, again, I think it's because of what they offer. I think they offer a better solution in most cases, and we're not 100% Microsoft shop, so that's a big decision for us. Is just because we're not but also just because they don't offer a lot of what we're looking for. I think they have some great tools, and I think that they are developing them very quickly, but it's just not there yet. And I think that if we were 100% a Microsoft shop, I think we'd probably lean more that way, but we're not. So it's really not something that we're looking very hard at.
I appreciate that. So any of the other panelists out there, is this something where you are aligned with Microsoft and you might be able to provide a little bit insight here?
So I'll add a little bit here. We have an E3 in terms of Office 365 license. Their E5 is where they include telephony, right? So we don't want to put all our eggs in the same basket simply because the Microsoft telephony service is not mature and doesn't provide all the feature sets that some of these RingCentral or 8x8 or Five9 provides, right? And then the second is, maybe we will go there when